What if I just do the whole video like this?
Let's talk about smurfing. Now, if you're not aware, smurfing is the act of a higher level player. Most of the time, somebody like, if you think of it in terms of ranked in like Overwatch or Apex, somebody who's like high diamond and above, creating a new account or an alt account so that they can play in lower level lobbies. It's called smurfing because actually, I don't know why it's called smurfing. It has really nothing to do with the Smurfs, but it's still one of those things where people, that's what it is, right? So it's high level players forcing themselves into lower level lobbies most of the time, like 99.99999% of the time, by creating new accounts. And there's various reasons that people have claimed for smurfing, and I'm just going to go ahead and give you my opinion. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. It's all crap. I don't care what the reason is. I don't get to play with my friends. Then don't play in ranked lobbies. Oh, but if they play with my friends and in pub lobbies, then they get put in my lobbies. I don't care. That sucks to be you. Sucks to be them. Doesn't mean you have to ruin the game for every fucking body else. In Overwatch, there was this thing called unranked to GM where GM players would smurf into lower level lobbies so that they could provide educational quote unquote content. Regardless, like no matter what the reason for smurfing is, I hate the act. I hate the act of smurfing. That is not to say I necessarily hate people who do smurf. Like that unranked to GM thing, there are people I greatly respect who did it. Boger, ML7. You know, I love both of those creators. I think that they're unranked to GMs. While I don't accept any reason, I understand why they did it, and it's not necessarily a nefarious reason. There's a lot of people out there that smurf just so they could pub stomp on lower level people, and it's just not fun. It's not fun for the people involved, and it's only fun for the person smurfing and whatever group of gremlins has decided to become their Twitch chat. It's just not interesting. It's not engaging. I think it's cringe as shit. With that being said, let's talk about the hardcore Survivor series that A-Run, JRM, Hens, and Oddsdarva are doing. Now, as always, I feel the need to put a disclaimer here. Just because I am criticizing the actions of these creators does not mean that I dislike them or that I hate them or that I think they're bad people. I don't. In fact, Otts and A-Run are two of my favorite Dead by Daylight creators. I think Hens is pretty cool, and I've never watched a single solitary second of JRM's content, but from the way that he likes to fuck with A-Run, I assume he's a really funny guy. That being said, I think that the act of smurfing to do this challenge is a tad ridiculous. So what is the challenge? Well, Hardcore Survivor, at least from what I can gather from watching it, is all four of these guys getting together and trying to go from Ash 4 to Iridescent 1 on all of their survivors, but if they die on a survivor, they lose access to that survivor. Now, the idea behind this challenge, and one of the reasons that they are smurfing for it, is that not every survivor is prestiged, like in their normal accounts where it doesn't matter if a survivor quote unquote dies, they still have all of the perks on every other survivor. And this first point is something that someone brought up in the comment section on the poll when I asked you guys if you actually wanted me to talk about this, because for whatever reason, you guys value my opinion on matters, and I've had people ask me to talk about it, and I just wanted to get a general community opinion, and for some reason, you guys wanted me to do that. But they said that in order to do the challenge to begin with, they have to smurf. No, they don't. You know what I mean? I get that the point of the challenge is if they're not working with brand new accounts, then when the survivor dies and they can no longer use the survivor, if they haven't prestiged that survivor, then they don't necessarily get those perks. But counterpoint, there are various amount of ways to do this challenge without smurfing. I can think of 3 off the top of my head. You can only use the perks of a survivor that you're currently using, right? So like, let's say you're using Fung, right? You can only use Alert, Lithe, and Technician, and whatever other general perks there are. You can't use anybody else's teachables, right? So when Fung dies, well, you no longer have access to those perks. You could do something where you could do something like you are only allowed to use 4 perks, or you have 4 perks, right? And then when you die, not only does that survivor die, but you lose access to the 4 perks you were using, right? So like if you're using a good synergized build like deliverance, will make it, plot twist, and adrenaline, and then you die on that character, not only do you lose that character, but you lose access to adrenaline, plot twist, deliverance, and will make it, which are 4 very good perks. And one that I thought up recently was that you were only allowed to use a survivor's 3 perks, and that's it. You couldn't use generals or anybody else's teachables. So like there's various ways to do the hardcore survivor challenge. And I actually really like and enjoyed the idea they came up with where they gain a new perk slot every time they grade up. So in Ash grade, they don't have any perks. And then they get to bronze and they get 1 perk. And then silver's 2, gold's 3, iridescence 4. That's really cool. You don't need a smurf to do that. So I don't really buy that they have to smurf in order to do this hardcore survivor. Now, another person brought up that it doesn't really matter that they're smurfing because the MMR only takes about a dozen or so games in order to find where you actually belong. And no offense to this person, but that's kind of bullshit. The MMR system does not work as it is. But the one thing I have found it is very good at is matching new players with new players. So I don't think that so when they create these accounts, when they create these new accounts, it automatically assumes they're new players, and it's going to be putting them with absolute toddlers to begin with. And I don't know if any of you remember what you were like when you first started playing Killer, but I certainly do. And I would not have been able to hold a candle to these 4, specifically when they're on comms. I wouldn't have been able to do it with just them on the team. Like if it was them and 3 randos, they probably would have gotten a 3 to 4 man out on my ass just because of how well they played. But on top of that, let's just say for a moment that after 12 games, a dozen, and even dozen, after 12 games, it puts you where you belong. And all of a sudden they're in the MMR where their main accounts are. That's still 12 games of the easiest double pips of their entire life. And no, not using perks and shit like that does not make it harder on them. Right? If you want, especially if you watch the first episode of Hardcore Survivor, the only time any of them ever took a hit was when JRM was trolling A-Run or A-Run got overconfident, right? And he didn't play quite correctly. That's the only time. And then even then, none of them actually died. And hook states were practically only happening if they were giving them out. I'm sorry, but it just doesn't seem like a challenge to me to start yourself off in baby MMR. If I started a hardcore killer series tomorrow and my first fucking 2 grades basically, which is Ash to bronze, were just in baby MMR against killers or against survivors who don't know their ass from a generator, you guys would all tell me that I'm not actually challenging myself, and you would be right. That being said, I do really think that the Hardcore Survivor series is interesting because the 4 of them have really great chemistry. Otz is constantly Otz is constantly I know the word. Exasperated. Otz is constantly exasperated at the other 3's fucking shenanigans. Hens is constantly trolling the killer. JRM is constantly trolling A-Run, and A-Run is constantly trolling himself by completely and utterly making the dumbest moves imaginable the second he thinks that the killer can't catch him. And it's all very funny and very engaging, and I think the 4 of them are completely and utterly entertaining, but I just don't think that the smurfing aspect is necessary. And I also feel like in general terms, the smurfing aspect kind of ruins a lot of the challenge and a lot of the perception of how hard the challenge can actually be. Because when you think about it, having to get from Ash 4 to Iridescent 1 and not being able to use repeat survivors is very hard. It's very difficult. And when I watched A-Run do it the first time, I think that if he would have been doing it in his own MMR as a solo, I don't know if he would have gotten it. It's very especially on Survivor. Especially on Survivor, because the emblem system on Survivor is more bullshit than the emblem system on Killer. I do have an emblem video, by the way. It's just taking way longer than I expected it to be. But the point is that in general, the challenge itself and the product itself is very fun and engaging and looks cool and interesting, but I just think that it's ruined by the smurfing aspect, especially in a lot of people's eyes. The last thing I want to talk about is I saw this post on Reddit when the first episode got released, and it was this person. No, I'm not going to talk about that. This. In general's terms speaking, I just think that if you're going to do something like a hardcore blank challenge, that putting yourself in lower lobbies for the beginning of this challenge is just not up to speed with what you could be doing, right? It doesn't seem like it's a proper challenge if you're purposely softening the blow on yourself. Like, take Spooky Loop's Hardcore Killer Challenge, for example, where if he lost, like he put like so many restrictors on himself. He was like, I get one build, no add-ons. If a killer dies, I lose that killer. And then he got to like gold or whatever. And he's like, I can't slug for the 4K at all, so I'm gonna be losing killers left and right. And then he fucking rolled in there. That's a challenge, right? That's a challenge. And I think that softening the blow of challenges makes it a lot less impressive in my eyes. I have a challenge I'm planning to do for you guys pretty soon, and trust me, it's not going to be fucking easy. But I just want you guys to know that I'm not going to soften the blow on myself too much. I'm not as good, so I'm going to do something slightly different. But we'll get to that when it comes to it. The point is that I just want you guys to understand that while I don't think that Otts and JRM and A-Run and Hens are toxic assholes who are just bullying lower level players, I do think that the next time they do this hardcore Survivor thing is, whenever it is, because they don't do it very often, I think that they need to stick to their own MMR and they need to just find other ways to make it more interesting so that they don't fucking look like a bunch of like bullies, basically. And again, I'm not saying they are, I'm saying that that's how people are perceiving them, and I just think that the smurfing part is unnecessary. But that's the end of the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, a special thank you to my channel members, Nuclear Bomb, Spirit Upgrades, The Cannibal Main, Alex Balix, Ryan Gesture, and Tabasco Raccoon. And just to let you guys know, we did just add a new perk to the channel memberships. If you are a console scrub, which is the second tier of the channel members, then you get to see these videos the moment that they're scheduled for upload. So sometimes I finish videos like a week in advance. You know, like I'm filming this on the Wednesday and you guys are going to see it on the Monday. You can actually see it on the Wednesday when I schedule it for upload. So, you know, if you're interested in that, go ahead. But also, if you're just a normal channel member, which is the first one, if you're a mobile gamer, then you get to see what is going to be talked about in the coming weeks. Every time I upload a video, I upload the thumbnail right alongside of it to the channel members, and they get to see what future topics are going to be. So if you're interested in either one of those, as well as, of course, special thank yous at the end of videos, make sure you guys hit that join button down below. I love you all so much, and I will see you in the next one.